Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today I know, shocking, we are not actually at the Strasburg Railroad. So I decided to take a little bit of break from the Strasburg, do something else. The past few weeks I've been relatively busy doing stuff, so I haven't really made any progress on the route. The only progress that I made is basically taking all the details off in preparation to make the old route. I have been in contact with a few of the historical people that I know, including Kurt Bell, so they've given me a couple of good pointers and some maps that I can use for reference. But anyway, moving on. So one of my favorite other routes to run, especially for logging operations, is the Eagle River Railroad. If you don't have it, you can download it from Jointed Rail. I think it's like $30 regular, but I would recommend waiting until some sort of holiday. They usually have a pretty good sale on it. You can find it anywhere from like 30 to 60% off, generally speaking. So I highly recommend that you just wait it out. But anyway, moving on, we've got a few modifications to go over. I do run the route from time to time, and given the fact that K&L just released a new locomotive for it, I thought it was a perfect time to kind of go over what I've done to the route. So first things first, you may notice that the trees are now actual like 3D trees, so that's pretty cool. Nothing special about them, they're just speed trees, but I think it makes a lot more sense. Second thing I've done is replace the ground textures with PBR textures. For the most part, they work perfectly. There's not too much interference with stuff. I have cleaned up a couple of things, but if you look close enough, you can still see some weird stuff, but usually it's kind of like out here where you're not gonna notice it too much. Like there's a little bit of weird stuff, and you'll see it from time to time, but it's not anything I'm really concerned about. But moving on, one of the things that I would like to do in the future is over here. If you haven't looked at the route before and noticed this is an old abandoned something. This used to be a dock, and I'm guessing this used to be a loop track of some sort, and maybe this is where all the logs got dumped in. I don't know, but it's something. But it's very clearly an abandoned track because you've got this that used to connect to it, and then it lines up with this, and then if that doesn't solidify it for you, there's a random boxcar that's just abandoned in place out here. So definitely used to be a railroad track. Would love to see somebody restore it. That'd be really cool. The whole route really seems like it's a late stage, like relatively modern take on an old railroad. So they've since abandoned a lot of what used to be there. So there's a lot of tracks that like don't exist anymore that used to exist. I'd like to see what it looked like back in its heyday. That's all I'm trying to say. But anyway, moving on. That's pretty much all the major stuff, except for one thing that I'm holding out on. But I promise I'll get into that. One of the other things I would like to see is a little extension of the narrow gauge here. For those of you who never venture over here, and I really can't blame you because a lot of people are just running logs from Camp A or Camp B over to the unloading facility. But if you don't know, the Eagle River does actually have a narrow gauge. So here, obviously, it is a standard gauge, but if you go over to here, you're like, oh, that's standard gauge. That's not a narrow gauge. Well, if you go over to here, you'll notice that here's the standard gauge. Here's the narrow gauge. So there is a narrow gauge section. So the standard gauge comes from over here and joins up. And we follow this. Here's the narrow gauge. You've got a parallel track here, and then you've got some sort of transfer facility here. And then all of a sudden, up your standard gauge stops. And then from here on out, there's some of that PBR nonsense that I was talking about. You've got a narrow gauge that comes over here, does a little bit of a windy bend, and then comes all the way over to here, and then goes onto the dock and then services this dock. So pretty cool thing, but I'd like to see somebody actually use it. That'd be really cool to see a video on the something over here rather than over here. But anyway, moving on. What is this thing that I'm hiding from you guys or haven't told you about? Alright, so as you know, K&L has released a couple of steam engines for this route. At this point, you've got a 280, a 480, and a 464T locomotive. That's a tank engine, by the way. Really cool models. My problem aren't with the models. My problem is a place for them to stay, a home for them. You'll notice that over here in Beaver Cove, we have our turntable, but we do not have any kind of roundhouse or engine facility or anything. And that got me thinking, okay, well, where are there engine facilities on this route? Of course, there's the one in Keene, but where are the other, service facilities? And I looked and looked, and sure enough, there is no other service facility. The only service facility on the line is right here in Keene. That is it, right there. Now, if I zoom out just a little bit, you'll notice that, come on, there we go. It only holds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 locomotives. Now, the 6 locomotives that I have stored in there right now are not coincidence. All 6 of those are different assets that you get when you download the route, so none of them are duplicates. Technically, there are 2 GP10s, but they are different assets on the list, so I've included them as separate assets in here. So I will kind of zoom through it a little bit. The engine noises tend to drown out my voice, so I'll shut up for a second, and then I'll explain what I was about to say. So as you can see, we got a GP50, 2 GP10s, an SD35, and 2 gensets. Yeah, and that's it. That's what you get with a route, which is fine. That's perfectly fine. The problem that I have is if you look, it's filled up. Now, originally, before I embarked on this endeavor, I managed to shuffle some engines around and be able to squeeze the 280 number 50 into here. But the problem was then they came out with a 480 and then they came out with the 464T, the X10. And suddenly I had to decide whether I wanted to store the steam engines outside or have the diesels outside. But that didn't really make a lot of sense to me either way. If you restored a steam engine, you don't want it to be exposed to the elements. That's unnecessary wear on a really expensive thing to fix if you have to, fix it. It's already expensive when you have to do the FRA teardowns and stuff every couple of years, but you don't want it sitting out. You want it to stay nice and pretty, so you're going to keep it inside. But at the same point, you also kind of want the same thing for your diesel engines. You need a place to service them, and well, that's the only place to service them. So I had an impasse where I'm like, well, the diesels need their shop, but the steam engines also need their shop. So then my next conundrum was with where am I going to put it? So I'm like, well, I could put it here in Keene, but there's already a lot of stuff going on in Keene. And I wanted to make use out of a place that doesn't see too much action. And if you've ever used the Eagle River Railroad for anything, you'll know that if you do excursions, typically you start out at Beaver Cove, and you'll either end up going to Keene, or you'll maybe, if you really want to go for a crazy excursion, go all the way up to Camp B. But you're not. The point is you're going through Keene at some point. So we don't need to add anything more to Keene. Plus, in order to add stuff, I'd have to take stuff away, and I don't want that. So I took inspiration from a real-life railroad called the Rayonier Railroad. That is where this lovely engine comes into play. Meet Rayonier number 38. So the Rayonier Railroad used to operate in, I believe, from the late 1800s up until 1980s as a railroad. The company itself still exists as a lumber company, but the railroad has long since been scrapped. So they no longer have a railroad. This used to be their largest engine. It's a 2662 Malay number 38. It was sold to a private owner after a couple of years of sitting outside their HQ, and I think the owner just passed away, and some scenic railroad has it now that they're going to try and restore it, but honestly it's sat outside for like 20 something years, so it's kind of a rusty pile of garbage right now. But anyway, moving on. Sorry, that's my cat if you can hear him. Moving on, we've got what was I about to say? This cat is kind of distracting. So yeah, I took inspiration from the Rainier Railroad, and part of that inspiration was their railroad camp. That was their railroad HQ / their engine service facilities and all that. And if you look on their kind of map of things, railroad camp is kind of in the middle of everything. And the reasons for that is I'm guessing that if you have all your engines stored somewhere in the middle, I have chosen right here. But if you have all your engines stored in the middle of the route, and you have to go to either side of the line, it's a lot quicker to get there rather than having your your engines all the way over here in Beaver Cove and traveling all the way here just to grab a train and go all the way back. And if it's an excursion, now you have to go all the way back here, drop off the train, and then go all the way back here. It's very redundant. So they put their railroad engine service facilities halfway through. That way, easy. You cut the distance that you have to travel to and from back. So if you go to here, pick up a train, run it to the logging facility, and now all you have to do is come back here, not all the way to here. So without further ado, let's give you the tour of the new engine service facility. Alright, so Alright, so this is the engine service facility. Originally it was going to be over here in this little loop, but I wanted to keep the topography intact the most that I could, and I kind of like this little road that cuts through it. One of the things I love most about railroads is when roads actually go somewhere, like little bits of scenery. And as you can see, it starts here and then winds all the way up to Camp B, which is all the way up here. But yeah, love that, and I didn't want to make it one of here's an example. This river, really cool spot where the railroad and the regular road cross one bridge at the same time, but then you notice the river stops literally right here, and in very blatant sight of the bridge, by the way. It is relatively extremely noticeable. So I really don't like that. I'm surprised I haven't changed it yet, to be honest, but anyway, I hate when that stuff happens. I wish they would extend it at least to the point where you can't see it, so you can let your imagination think that it goes somewhere. But when it's like right there is no imagination. It's just, oh, they just stopped the thing right there. But anyway, moving on. The reason that it chose right here is because it already has kind of a siding here. Some logging trains would stop here waiting for, westbounds to come in, or vice versa. You would have your westbounds come here waiting for their eastbounds. Most of the railroad is a single track main line, so there is a lot of hurry up and wait. But I chose this because not only is it near a siding and stuff, but it's also right next to the spur which goes up to Camp A, and then the spur which goes to Keene, and eventually Camp B. And then anything from here onward is more or less one main line that runs all the way down there to Beaver Cove. So, alright, enough stalling. Let's show you the actual thing. So, we go in here. We've got these spur off. Now this used to be a just random siding that kind of was unused. I never really serviced it, but I decided to change up the whole thing and change it into something more, well, used. So we have all of the passenger service equipment stored up here. One of the bigger problems, besides the engines not having a place to be stored, was figuring out a place to store all these cars. Because as of now, there's quite a bit of equipment that the Eagle River has for their various tourist things. And the only place that I would store it before that really made any kind of actual sense is down here in Beaver Cove, where you have this relatively big, yard. It's the biggest yard that the Eagle River has. So I had it all stored on one of these tracks. But that kind of looks stupid, and it was just kind of out there and didn't really make sense. There was no place nearby to restore the cars or anything. So anyway, going back to here. The place I chose was Myrtle Junction. I think Myrtle Creek, that's it. Myrtle Creek. It's a midpoint on the route, more or less. I think technically the midpoint's right here. And I was thinking about putting it here or here, but that looked kind of stupid, cutting into the topography that much. So it would look really stupid if I put it here. So I chose the next best thing. Right here kind of made sense. It's already flat. There's already some, stuff that's been taken out here because it used to be an old logging camp. And yeah, so I thought it was kind of the perfect place. They might try and reuse it for something else. Anyway, we got a full service facility. This is based off of a legitimate roundhouse yard layout. I believe the one I used is somewhere in Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. If I find the exact yard it's based off of, I'll post it in the description below. But anyway, we got a water tower here. We got a sanding tower here. We've got a dual track culling facility here with a load track. We even have a wash track here. So the engines, coming home from the day can wash off all the mud and whatnot. And then over here, these are ash pits. I do have better ash pits that look a lot better, but the main issue is that they're only meant for single track usage, and I can't dual it, put them up against each other. But the other ash pits have like actual stairs that go down into it, kind of almost like an inspection pit. They look really cool, but couldn't fit them in. But anyway, we've got our wrecking crew track here, the maintenance away stuff, and then we've got all of the older and kind of newer passenger equipment here, and then we've got the latest addition to the fleet, the heavyweights here, the office car special. But anyway, moving on to the actual stuff you care about. This is the powerhouse. There are the auxiliary tenders. Most of the buildings here, the red ones, those are all East Broadtop stuff. Would have put a lot more of the East Broadtop stuff here. Jeez, that was a mouthful. But if you don't know, the East Broadtop is a narrow gauge, and a lot of the buildings are, especially the engine facilities, are, well, narrow gauge. So can't exactly make that work out too well. So anyway, moving on to the actual stuff that you care about, the engines. So we've got the reskin of the Rayonier 38 for Eagle River. This is the 2662, number 19. There we go. Same engine, just different skin, but dressed up for Eagle River. We've got the 480 Mastodon from K&L. We've got this 282 from, it's an old Ben Neal engine. If you look really closely, you can see that you can still see the polygons in it. It's not rounded, but honestly really fun locomotive nonetheless. It's like 10 years old and it's still going strong, but not sure the website that I got this or the 262 that I'll talk about in a second, but one of the people that I drew inspiration on modifying the route from was a creator called Luke S. And Luke has a wonderful video on his channel where he describes all the freeware content that you can download for the Eagle River, including but not limited to the Rayonier engines / the Eagle River's reskins of it from Trainz Forge, or these cool little skeleton cars for logs, and even the loads that are here. So yeah, pretty cool. But anyway, getting back into the engines, he has a link to these. The link will give you 3 engines. It will give you a 282, a 280, and a 262 Prairie type. Yeah, pretty cool engines. If you're looking not to spend any money on it, like I said, those are old and they are freeware. So if you want to run Steam excursions but you don't want to pay for the K&L payware, those could work perfectly fine for you. The 262 is probably my favorite little tiny engine to run, like period. I think it's just the coolest thing. And the 282 is a fun, get down and dirty, hauler for the railroad. And the 280, I don't choose to use it because I have the newer K&L 282, which I think looks better. But if I didn't have it, then I would definitely use that. It's a great fill-in. But moving on, so this is the 282, as you saw. This is the K&L 280, so this is not free. This is payware. We've got the newest edition from K&L, the 464T. This is that. It's Canadian National X10A, but heavily modified. Now I know it says number 50 on here. Both of these engines are not labeled 50. They're the 464T is dynamically numbered, so unfortunately it just picks a random number, and I just happened to spawn in the 50. I'll probably go back and change it eventually, but it doesn't really bother me because I don't use the excursion engines too much. But moving on, we've got the 262. This is a really cool engine. This is the Prairie type that I was talking about. You don't see them too much on the railroad anymore, and just a really cool engine to run. Highly recommend it. And last but not least, we got old 17 here. 17 is a Williamette. So a Williamette is a lot like a shade gear locomotive. However, it is a little bit different. There are some things that are different. We'll kind of bring it out here. Alright, so we'll get away so that way we can actually hear it over the compressor going off. But it's a lot like a Shay, except with a Shay, one of these cylinders, the front one is inverted, so you'd have 2 forward-facing ones and then one that's facing the rear. Whereas here, that is not the case. But still a really cool geared locomotive, and it's obviously dressed up for the Eagle River Railroad. Very fun little engine to run. The thing I like using the geared locomotives for are primarily, the way I run the railroad is that the standard regular 282s, all that fun stuff, they run from Beaver Cove up to Keene, which is right here. And then anything from Keene, like right here at this Y, up to Camp B is run by geared locomotives, much like how Cass does it. Why, if you don't have the route, then you probably don't know why, but if you do, then this is going to make a lot of sense. But up to Camp B, it is a very steep grade, and it's also a switchback. So as you can see here, you've got 1, 2, 3, and they're all at different heights. You go from being here to all the way up here at once. So pretty big steep grade, and it's just the perfect setting for a geared locomotive. You can use the Williamette. I forgot to mention that is freeware from Trainz Forge. What a fantastic engine, and the fact that it's freeware is just awesome. But highly recommend that you pick those up. You can also pick up some of the CAS engines for free. I'm not sure where you can find them, but if I do, I'll post them in the description below. But really cool engines, and they just fit so well on that little run up to the Camp B. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. I wanted to make it as realistic as possible, so we got a record track. We've got some of the other spurs here. Technically speaking, this would be the wrecking track right here with the first set of cars. This would be the maintenance track, the stuff that has to be repaired and stuff. So old engines, old cars, broken cars, whatever. These two would be inbound and outbound. Doesn't really matter which. And then this is a service track for I think this is service track for cars, and this is a service track for engines. It is based off of a real yard, but I can't remember which one. I'd have to look at the blueprints that I have, but very, very based off of a real yard. If you're wondering, yes, everything in here works. So if I wanted to get water, I can get water. If I wanted to get coal, it'll rain down coal. And yes, if I run through the wash tracks, it will actually wash the engine. We can demonstrate that with the Willamette here. We'll give it a little run through here. So as you can see, the wash track does actually work pretty neat there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the big thing I wanted to show you. It's not a huge engine facility, but it really doesn't have to be. It's meant to just keep some of the... this is more or less supposed to be the hub of the excursion center and the historical aspects. So my take on it was that they have their operational steam fleet, but they also have some of the not operational steam fleet that they keep as just static museum exhibits. So in my mind, the static exhibits would be the Willamette, the 262, the 280, and the 2662. Those would be the static exhibits that don't run, but they're just there as historical preservation. And then your active fleet, which would be the 280, the 480, and the 464T. So yeah, that's pretty much been my take on the Eagle River. I do intend on adding more to it eventually, but as of right now, that is how it stands. Future projects for me are probably going to be back to the Strasburg Railroad. I do want to finish up that route in case anybody cares. Maybe add some more little tiny things, but I also kind of want to venture out to do other routes and stuff. I still am tinkering around with the idea of playing other games, but I'm not sure about that at this point. It's getting kind of hard to adjust my schedule to keep with a consistent upload basis and be playing as many games as I am. So I've got to decide whether I want to make the channel a priority or if I just want to have fun and relax. But regardless, I will keep uploading videos, but they probably will be pretty infrequent, so I can't promise bi-weekly uploads or whatever. But I will try my best to shoot for at least one video a month from this point forward. But anyway, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you got anything suggestion-wise for what I can do with this route next, please let me know. I'm definitely down for it. I do plan on having an extension out of Keene. I think that they left the door wide open right here for an extension. You've got the engine facilities. and then it just kind of stops here, and I really think I could just add a tunnel here and make a really stupid easy transition into some other route, like right here. There is definitely the room for a route that would connect here and kind of spur out and go to wherever, so I really think I could make that work. But anyway, if you have any other comments and stuff that you would like to see me do, please leave it in the comments. It doesn't have to be this route. If you want me to check out other routes, I can do that. I've been tinkering around with the idea of possibly doing route reviews for you, so if there's any routes that you want to see, that I would do that. But I think my next video is going to be a more or less tour of a really cool route based off of, I would say, the Great Northern is probably the most relatable railroad, either that or the Northern Pacific, one of the two. Maybe Rio Grande, but not really Rio Grande. It runs from what would be Portland, Oregon, up through the mountains into Utah or Nevada, somewhere where it looks very deserty, kind of like this. I mean specifically the rocking area, not that. But it's a really cool ride. I think the whole route is like 60 miles or more. It's a pretty big route. It's definitely one of those that if you want to run through the whole thing, it's going to take you like 2 or 3 hours real time. It's a really fun route to run. I will say there's a bit of inaccuracy with the grades going up the mountain. You can do it in cab mode, but you're going to be really struggling to get some of the engines to pull it. Maybe not so much the modern day diesel engines, but if you want to run steam engines, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to get them to climb up some of the grades. The route that I'm talking about is based in the transition era where you had both the early diesels and late steam engines. So, but anyway, yeah, that's going to be my next route to show you. It's a really cool route, really long route, really detailed route, and best of all, it's free. So I would highly recommend that you download this next route. But if you are curious as to what it is, you will have to stay tuned to the next one. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.